30 years and 11 days ago, Robin Renea Abrams disappeared under mysterious circumstances after becoming involved with a married police officer. Did she disappear voluntarily or was she murdered? Let's investigate. If you generally enjoy mysteries, true crime, disappearances and the occasional conspiracy, please feel free to subscribe for more content like this. Robin Renea Abrams was 28 years old in 1987 when she began dating a married police officer in his 40s, Anthony Marquez. It's unclear how serious the two were. Robin's family were aware that they were dating but didn't realise that Anthony was married. Robin herself wasn't even aware that he was married when they first met, and some sources suggest this was the reason they eventually broke up. They met while Robin was working at a McDonald's in her hometown in Beecher, Illinois in 1988. Anthony convinced Robin to apply for a job at the sheriff's department, where she was eventually hired as a deputy. As well as the fact that Anthony was a married man, the pair didn't have the healthiest of relationships, to say the least. It's hard to work out exactly what happened in each incident, as accounts all seem to be he said, she said, but both Robin and Anthony accused each other of various crimes as well as harassment. In October 1988, Anthony allegedly smashed into Robin's car while she was driving and her mother was in the passenger seat. Within a month of this incident, Robin ended the relationship and filed a complaint against him, claiming he had harassed her and slashed her car's tyres on 4 occasions. Anthony was charged with criminal damage, though the charges were dropped in 1989 due to lack of evidence. Only a month after Robin had filed the complaint, and just 2 weeks before her probationary period was due to end, Robin's employment at the sheriff's department was terminated. Officially, it's unclear whether this termination had anything to do with the complaints that she filed against Anthony, though it does seem quite a coincidence if not. Shortly after she was let go, Anthony filed a criminal complaint of harassment against Robin. The complaint was eventually dismissed, though Anthony continued to file complaints against Robin in that year, and in August he claimed that she had tried to run him off the road. In May, she had been arrested for disorderly conduct. She had also been arrested several other times that year, though I'm not sure if these were directly related to reports from Anthony or if they were unrelated incidents. No charges were brought against Robin after she was arrested for disorderly conduct, and she was found not guilty in the case of reckless driving. After accusing Anthony of stalking her and making false accusations against her, Robin was able to get a restraining order in November 1989, which was then extended to November 1990. In December, Robin filed a federal lawsuit against not only Anthony, but 7 other members of the police department where she had previously worked. She accused them of wrongful termination, sexual harassment, and violation of her civil rights. The next month, Anthony filed an assault charge against Robin, claiming she raised her hand against him in a threatening manner, though she was not prosecuted for this. As for the accusations against Anthony and his colleagues, the trial was due to begin on the 22nd of October 1990. However, Robin never showed up to give a deposition, resulting in the case being dismissed in January 1991. 18 days before the trial, Robin vanished. She was last seen at around 4 p.m. on the 4th of October 1990 when she waved at her father as they passed each other on the road. At 3 a.m. the next morning, someone in Harvey, Illinois, called the police to report someone breaking into a car. A witness later said that the car had been dropped off at 10 p.m. by 2 men in a tow truck. The car was confirmed to belong to Robin. The doors were locked and the keys were still in the ignition. I did wonder if that was weird at all. I don't really know much about cars, especially older ones. Would they lock themselves while the keys were still in the ignition if Robin had gotten out of the car? I'm not really too sure on that one. It's probably not weird at all, I'm just not really sure why that happened. 3 days later, Robin's purse was found in a residential area about 3 blocks away from where her car was found. Her credit cards were missing. And that was the last shred of evidence ever discovered in this case. Over 30 years later, Robin is still missing, and no one knows what happened to her, though there are a few theories, of course. Starting with the obvious theory that Anthony, possibly with the help of his co-workers, killed Robin to prevent her testifying against them. It's also been suggested that Anthony's stepbrother might have been involved as well. Robin's sister said that years later that state police had told her that Anthony as well as his stepbrother were both suspects in the case. In 2017, FBI agents dug up around a house that was once occupied by the stepbrother, where it was rumoured that Robin's remains may have been. Despite cadaver dogs alerting the handlers multiple times in the basement, all they found was a bone from 1,000 years ago and no signs of Robin's remains. That doesn't mean that she was never there though. It's entirely possible that the remains could have been moved at some point later. That wasn't the first property search either. In 1996, one of Anthony's friends named Art came forward and said that he believed that Robin's remains might have been buried on his property. He told police that one night in 1990 that he noticed a car pull onto his property. The next morning, he discovered what looked to be a recently dug grave. He didn't try to dig it up or tell anyone at the time or anything until he was arrested 6 years later, and he only gave up this information as part of a deal, so make of that what you will. But when the police searched the property, according to one officer, the deputy chief told them to dig around 100 feet away from where Art had said that the body might be. Another search was performed after the deputy chief retired, and signs of a grave were found, but not Robin's body, leading people to believe that she may have been relocated. Robin's family were also made aware of another place that could be the location of Robin's body. A property in a rural area of Will County, around a half-an-hour drive from where Robin's car was found, included some farmland that was used by one of the officers at Will County Sheriff's Department. When the owner died and a trucker bought the property, they still allowed the officer to use the land. Sometime after though, the trucker wanted to make some kind of change to the property. I'm not sure what exactly, but I imagine it would involve digging. Strangely, he was not able to get a permit. Apparently the officer didn't want him making changes, even though it was his property. He was threatened and his house was even shot at. In 2014, the property was set on fire. I couldn't find any information to suggest exactly what state that the house was in, but it sounded like the house had completely burnt down and that it's never been rebuilt since. It's a very weird story, and it definitely sounds like the officer might have had something to hide, though who knows if it could have even been something completely unrelated to Robin. It was pretty close by, and considering that the officer didn't want the ground digging up, you'd think that they probably had something to hide, and it's not too unlikely that that could have been a body. But it also could have been anyone's. It's not forced to have been Robin's. As far as I'm aware, the area was never searched, and even if it was now, it's not unlikely that the remains would have been moved or maybe even destroyed by the fire. I'd be really interested to know if this officer knew Anthony or any of the other officers that had been accused by Robin, because that'd make it seem even more suspicious. Wherever Robin's body may have been hidden, it's obvious that Anthony and the other officers at the Sheriff's Department at least had reason to make Robin disappear. I said earlier that factually it's kind of hard to know exactly what happened between Anthony and Robin, considering there were no other witnesses apart from in one incident, Robin's mother, but I don't think there were any other witnesses to any of the other incidents that happened. But that said, it definitely seems more likely to me that Anthony was the one that was stalking and harassing Robin, considering she was the one that eventually got a restraining order against him. It's hard to know whether Anthony's accusations against Robin were completely fabricated or not, but even if they weren't, it sounds like, eventually at least, that she wanted nothing to do with him and that he didn't like that. Some people believe that strings were being pulled after Robin filed a police report against Anthony a couple of years prior. Robin and her mother had showed up to the court, only to be informed that they had missed the trial as the date had been changed, but no one had ever informed them of this. I think it's pretty likely that she was fired from a job at the Sheriff's Department because of the accusations that she made against Anthony. I mean, you've got to think this was way before the Me Too movement, before accusations like that were taken so seriously, but even that aside, Anthony had worked there for some time. The other officers knew him a lot more than they knew Robin. He'd even been to school with some of his colleagues, so it just makes sense that they'd probably take his side over hers. When she ended the relationship, maybe he couldn't accept that and began stalking and harassing her, maybe hoping that she'd take him back for some time. But then maybe he started making up the false accusations against Robin to take the eye off himself. Then when she finally took serious action against Anthony and the other members of the Sheriff's Department, maybe they killed her to silence her, hoping to save their jobs and their reputation. It just seems way too much of a coincidence that she just vanished so close to when she was supposed to testify in court. Now obviously no evidence has ever been found to tie Anthony and the other officers to Robin's disappearance, but I mean, if anyone could make someone disappear and not have any evidence, it'd probably be those guys, right? Even if the other officers weren't involved, it definitely doesn't look great for Anthony. I mean, he definitely had motive to make her want to disappear. And on the day of Robin's disappearance, a witness stated that they saw both her and Anthony in the same gas station on the same day. It's been noted that it just seemed like from the off that law enforcement just weren't too bothered about solving this case. Many experts over the years have come forward and offered the help, but they've always been rejected. I mean, why would this be if they genuinely wanted to solve the case? Anthony was later fired from the sheriff's department. I have no idea why. I don't know if it was anything to do with what happened with Robin or if it was just something completely unrelated, but it is quite an interesting point. Another possibility is that Anthony's wife found out about the affair and killed Robin as revenge. I'm not sure if she definitely knew about the affair, but considering Anthony was arrested in relation to things that happened with Robin, it does seem pretty likely that she would have known about this. Unless Anthony just managed to convince her it was just some crazy stalker that he didn't know personally or something like that. Assuming the wife knew about the affair, maybe she believed it was ongoing, or maybe Anthony had convinced her that it was over a long time ago but Robin carried on harassing him, and maybe that would have drove the wife to want to harm Robin. She might have even forgiven her husband and didn't want him to lose his job or his reputation, and so wanted to find a way to stop Robin testifying against him. No evidence to support this theory has ever been made public. I mean, I guess it's just another person that would have had reason to want Robin to disappear. It's not even beyond the realms of possibility that Anthony could have helped cover up for his wife, but I do think it's more likely that he himself probably just killed her. I guess it's not even beyond the realms of possibility that Robin could have just been a randomly picked victim of foul play. Maybe everything that happened with Anthony is just the red herring in this case, and that she was actually killed by someone that she didn't even know. Without a body or any evidence, it's impossible to completely rule this theory out, though everything that happened with Anthony just seems too relevant to ignore. Another popular theory in this case is that Robin actually faked her own disappearance with hopes that Anthony would get arrested for it and charged with her murder. Kind of Gone Girl style, I suppose. Kind of in support of this theory, there's no evidence to suggest that Robin was murdered. No body has ever been found, and as far as anyone knows, she's still alive to this day. That said, there's also no evidence to suggest that Robin might have done this. As far as I'm aware, there's no witness statements to suggest that this could have happened, no credible sightings of Robin since the day she disappeared. She's never contacted friends or family since, which would be pretty unlike her. It just seems kind of unlikely that if she was alive, that over 30 years later, that still no one would have heard anything from her. It just seems way more likely to me that she was the victim of foul play. And I think she was definitely targeted as opposed to it just being some random serial killer or something like that. I mean, a camera being found in a car suggests against robbery as a motive. Her credit cards were missing, which could suggest robbery, but it could also just mean that the killer dumped her purse somewhere and that someone found it and just took advantage then. She had stated to her family before her disappearance that if she were to go missing or anything were to happen to her, that Anthony would be responsible. I mean, I suppose you could argue this either way. It could either point to Anthony being responsible, or it could be that she was just planning her own disappearance and trying to frame Anthony, but it is just an interesting point to make. The witness who saw the car being dropped off said that they could identify the two men if need be, but this just didn't really seem to go anywhere. According to the Case Acquaint podcast, the witness picked out two photos from a lineup of the two men that were supposedly the ones who dropped off Robin's car that night. And the two photos were of Anthony and his stepbrother. Though I couldn't find any other sources to confirm this, there were quite a few articles that I couldn't read due to location, so it might have been in one of those, but I thought it was an interesting point to mention, but just to say that I can't confirm that with any other sources. But if that's true, there's no doubt in my mind that Anthony was involved in her murder, and I just think it's absolutely crazy that he was never investigated further and the case just seemed to have been dropped as soon as it appeared. I can't even imagine how horrible it must be for Robin's family just knowing that they'll probably never get justice because no one cares to investigate this case. So I think I've made my opinion pretty clear, and it seems pretty obvious to me who's responsible for Robin's disappearance. As I try to point out in most of my videos, it's impossible for an internet sleuth like me to know everything there is about a case. There's always going to be details that the police don't make public to try and make sure that they get the right person in the end. So for all I know, there might be some information out there that proves that Anthony isn't guilty, but from the information that is publicly available, it just seems so obvious. I definitely think he's the most likely suspect, and he may or may not have had help from his stepbrother or co-workers, but I definitely think he needs investigating further. A reporter asked Anthony about the disappearance years later, and he just said that he didn't even care, and when he was asked if he was involved at all, he just hung up. I mean, if he really wasn't involved, maybe he's just sick of being falsely accused, but to not even be bothered that someone he used to know has disappeared and possibly even dead just seems really cold. If you have any information on the disappearance of Robin Abrams, please contact Illinois State Police Or if you have any information on this case that might relate to corruption within the Illinois State Police, please head to fbi.gov.tips to report this. So what do you think happened to Robin? Do you think Anthony murdered her, or did she disappear for some other reason? I'd be really interested to hear your thoughts in the comments. And if you enjoyed this video, please consider liking and subscribing, and I'll see you next Thursday in a new video.